It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. Today, we welcome an NBA legend turned businessman and an accomplished musician. After 3 years of college ball at Depaul University, he was drafted and played for the San Diego Clippers. In the 1982-83 season, he won the NBA Rookie of the Year award. In 18 NBA seasons, he was a two-time All-Star and scored over 19,000 points, which placed him among the top 50 career scorers.
Terry Cummings, brilliant young player from Depaul, Chicago. Cummings again, tough angle shot from behind the board on the right baseline. Look at the follow. He's all over the place.
The steal by Isaiah Thomas. He's tied up, but Cummings on a 2-on-1 gets it off the glass. He does that every day, right?
Of course.
And he's made his mark in other walks of life since his playing days, as an ordained minister, a multimedia mogul, as well as a songwriter and singer. Terry Cummings joins this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN right now, with your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream edition of Listen In with KNN, presented by Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM and 1340 AM, with me, your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Now, happy spring, happy March Madness, lots of great stuff to be excited about. Of course, everyone's getting the vaccine, and we're hoping to get back to life as normal, but it's March. We know the madness is on, and so I decided to bring in someone who knows basketball very well from his playing days and is doing amazing things now, but he is none other than Terry Cummings, known as the Preacher Man. Of course, he's now an ordained minister, as you heard in the intro, one of the great power forwards to play the game that we love. Yes, basketball, 18 seasons in the National Basketball Association, scoring almost 20,000 points. That just tells you his greatness and his playing. And we're going to talk all about it right here live on Listen In with KNN. So without further ado, please help me welcome none other than Terry Cummings to the show. Terry, how are you today?
I'm fine, Kelsey. Good to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for your time. And I know we had to reschedule it, Terry, because you just had a birthday. So first off, happy belated birthday, the big 6-0, right, Terry?
Yeah, happy about it. You know, I come from Chicago, where a lot of the cats I grew up with didn't make it past 30 or 40. So This is a very, very blessed and grace-filled time for me.
It's a big age, and I definitely want to talk about your Chicago roots. Before I get there, are you allowed to tell us how you spent the birthday, Terry? Did you do anything fun? I know COVID quarantine birthdays aren't the best, but did you get to at least do something fun with the family?
Well, we had a parade, a drive-by parade. A lot of the parishioners from the ministry and friends just drove by. We had cupcakes and little small gifts that we gave to them, and then on Monday, we did a virtual birthday celebration, and it was really great because I got to see my grandkids, I got to see my brothers and sisters, my siblings, and a whole bunch of my friends from all over the country and the world. So it was really special for me.
I'm so glad to hear that. I love that you were still able to celebrate with everyone. I've seen the parades. They look fun, Terry, and I'm just glad. And seeing 60 is a blessing. And so I'm glad, and hopefully we'll see 61 and so many more ages down the line. Terry touched on it. I do want to talk about Chicago, but I also have to ask you, is everyone doing okay and fine? I know COVID, of course, 19 has impacted a lot of people, a lot of families. Is everyone healthy? Is everyone okay, Terry? And hopefully some of your family members.
As far as I know, we always say about us Cummings, boy, we are. It takes a whole lot to keep one of us down. You might get one of us down, but to keep us down is a whole nother story. But my family seems to be very good. Thank God for that. Yes,
that is such a blessing. Well, now that we got that out the way, Terry, let's get into it. So let's talk about it, how you first started growing up in Chicago, right in Hammond, Indiana. And then is this right, Terry? You were one of 13 kids?
Yeah, that 7 boys, count me, 6 girls.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about that. Being one of 13 kids, growing up down the street from Cabrini Green. You talked about Chicago, your Roseland neighborhood, far south side of Chicago. What was that like, and how did you first get into basketball?
Well, with the family, there was never a boring moment. We were not allowed to go spend the night at other kids' homes because my dad said it's enough of us to play with each other. And the Cabrini Green experience was really interesting because we didn't really know how bad Cabrini Green was because we were living so close to it, and we're always up in there. And the only people that really had a problem that were the ones that didn't belong there more often than not. And I actually, as far as how I got into basketball, my first adaptation towards sports was hockey and baseball. I got into hockey because of the Chicago Blackhawks back then in the 70s. It was the Stan Mikita, Dennis Magnuson, Tony Exposito, Stan Mikita teams. And we would literally build our nets and travel from one neighborhood to the other and play in the parks against those neighborhood teams, you know. And we were all black. We were probably the only black kids that were doing it. But we were doing it on ice skates during the winter and on roller skates during the summer playing hockey, and then got real caught up in baseball, Chicago Cubs, Chicago White Sox. And so baseball became a thing. And then all of a sudden from 9th grade to 10th grade, I grew from 5'8" to 6'4" over the summer and actually just graduate into basketball. But my greatest mentor and person that I looked up to at the time was my brother Lee, who was a year older than me. And his whole dream was to be the next coming of Dr. J at 6'3", 6'4". And he was a tremendous scoring player and talent. And he whipped me many a days and evenings until I got back from Indiana, visiting the grandparents, and was 6'4", and that was that.
It was all you. Then it was all you, right?
Because after that, I mean, I'd always had this little chip on my shoulder anyway, being the younger brother of a guy that everybody talked about. And I was always working to prove myself worthy of being on the same court with him. And then when I started to grow, that same chip grew too. And it helped me throughout my career and throughout my life. I mean, because I don't take anything for granted.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that you touched on that and that height spurt. You get into basketball. Was it easy to kind of matriculate into basketball? I know you were tall, but like, who are some of your favorites to watch, Terry? Who did you try to model your game after growing up in Chicago?
Well, when I was coming up, you know, the players weren't LeBron or even Michael Jordan. The players were in the Chicago system. You know, there was Mickey Johnson, Bob Love, probably more Bob Love on the Chicago side, Norm Van Leer and cats like that. But I think that offensively, my game came from watching. I don't know if you remember this movie, Cornbread Earl and Me. From Keith Wilkes, who became Jamal Wilkes. But my shot had some affinity to his, but I liked the way he played. He was shorter and smaller than me. And by the time I got to the league, I think I got to play against him a little bit. But that movie was my love and basketball before Love and Basketball came on the set.
I love that. The love of basketball obviously carried you very far into your playing sports. I love that you touched on playing different sports. I always encourage kids, Terry, to play a variety of different sports, but you got very good in basketball. And it's also great to hear that you played hockey. You know, I know we don't unfortunately get to see many faces that look like ours, Terry. I know the National Hockey League has a program called Hockey is for Everyone, where they're trying to get more children, especially in urban areas, to play the game of hockey, because not all of us get to grow up, Terry, with ice skates, right? Or ice skates or ice rinks in our neighborhood.
It's an expensive sport too.
Yeah, it's expensive, right? And so not only our
For
families
us
have,
in the inner city, we have to be sponsored to play that, like we do tennis.
right.
Basketball is not cheap either with the AAU system that's set up, but
Yeah.
you can play basketball anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
And we played in the winters. We would pack down the snow in Chicago with sand from the garage and put the old tire from the bike, pull the spokes out, nail it to the telephone pole, and play
Yeah.
outside with a ball that had no leather or tread on it. But that we learned to play under all conditions, and
Right.
you can do that with most sports if that is where your heart is.
Right. If you love it, like you said, you'll find a way to make it happen. And you guys
Absolutely.
way, and it took you very far, Terry, which is just great to hear and hopefully inspiring for the kids out there. Even if you weren't given all the means initially, it's just making a will, making a way, and fighting for what you want, and just continuing on your life in Chicago, Terry. You talked about this, but I know, before you grew up, you talked about how it's kind of rough growing up, right? So at first you were fighting and stuff and doing things like that. So, let's talk about how you were able to get on the right trajectory to play basketball, to then in Chicago, Terry, becoming an ordained minister right at the age of 16. You initially changed your life around. So talk about that transformation and how that happened.
Well, when we were living on the north side down the street, we were on Willow and Halsted, which was a few blocks away, maybe about 5-10 minutes away from Cabrini Green. But by the time I was 7, 8 years old, I'd seen my first man killed. I was smoking and drinking at 8, 9 years old, and it was just a part of the atmosphere I grew up in, and then grew up in an atmosphere where when we moved from the north side to the south side, which is Roseland, 119th Street, I was carrying a gun and a knife at the time, and it wasn't to rob and steal. It was to protect myself because the area was really rough. But it was growing up in those places that I started to understand, at 16, 17, my dad was an alcoholic most of my life. And I had the struggle of my life with him because I did not like my father for the abusiveness that was physical. But then when I grew up and started to mature, I started to understand from the stories I had heard and was hearing how bad my dad had it from his father. And although I did not like the way I was treated, I believe all of the siblings, especially the males, were treated better than my dad was. So he worked to do better, and his better still didn't seem to be good enough for us until we got old enough, had children, and looked back at it.
Yeah.
The basketball part, again, my brother Lee was the inspiration, but God inevitably was the one that gave me a perception or a vision to be and to do something. And to be able to do something and be somebody, you need a vehicle to carry you there.
Yeah.
And although I would not have been able to put it in this vernacular when I was a younger man, I clearly understand that the whole point of everything that God has called me to was to use basketball as a tool and a stepping stone to get there. And I got to basketball. There are some key people. My dad pressed us, but he was never involved. Coach Howard at Carver High School, he was the guy that coming through, once I got saved in that summer or became a Christian that summer of 16 years old, I left Harlan High School and went to Carver High School to sign up for night school. Walking through the front door, I walked right past the coach, and he asked me who I was, and turns out he had coached one of my older brothers in Hammond.
Yeah.
And he said, "You want to play ball?" I said, "Yeah, I do." So, but you got to talk to my mom because she don't want me coming out here because it was in Allgale Gardens,
Yeah.
and Allgale Gardens was another Cabrini Green, and it was right across the street from the high school. And I begged her, I pleaded with her. I poured out my heart to her until she heard my petition, allowed me to go to that school, go back to Carver. And there were some tremendous lessons in that sophomore year at Carver. I thought I was ready to play. Coach Howard wouldn't let me play. He would never put me on the court in front of his juniors and seniors. And he told me that if you think you're going to play in front of these kids who have given me the discipline and the desire and the dedication they've had these 3 or 4 years, he said, you're mistaken. So I wound up not playing very much at all in my sophomore year. But that lesson stuck with me because I would have to deal with it again when I got to college, about waiting your turn. Not thinking that just because you think you're good enough you know, that you can go. But I had Coach Howard there at high school. And then, you know, going back into the Summer Pro-Am League in Chicago,
Yeah.
I was given the opportunity to play against professionals at 16 years old. Now, I wasn't allowed to play in high school, but in the Pro-Am, I could play against the pros from the NBA and overseas and college kids. And I shined that whole summer. People was like, who is this kid? Because I didn't go to any of the camps, BC, 5-star. I didn't have the acclaim that all the other guys, the Teddy Grubbs, Mark Aguirre's, and Doc Rivers and them had. And I was called a blue chip because I literally came from nowhere. No one knew about me unless you were in the city.
Right.
And so by the time my junior year came around, it was my team at Carver. And I think I averaged about 23, 24 points and 16 boards. And I was starting to do work, but I was the only one that wasn't surprised, you know, and had another stellar year in my senior year. And then I went and decided I wanted to go away for school. So I went and visited the University of Iowa, Lou Olson, then came back, and I was on my way to go to UNLV and visit with Tark there. And I felt really impressed not to leave Chicago. So then I started looking around Chicago, and I decided I wanted to go to Depaul, but Depaul had not reached out to me. Every other school in the country had. So I called them on the phone. I picked the phone up and called them. And I said, why have you all not come to recruit me? And they said, we've been trying to. Your coach won't let us get through to you. So I said, I'll tell you what, you know, I'm coming there. I said, set up an appointment. I want to come to see the university and meet Ray Meyer. And, you know, really what sold me on Depaul was Ray Meyer. I mean, it wasn't the grandfather or the daddy thing. It was the fact that Ray Meyer was equipped to allow any boy, male or man that came to that university to become a man. He was equipped for that more than he was to be a grandfather at times for kids coming through the inner city. But that's how I came into basketball as that far at college and stuff like that. It was a whirlwind, and it still is, because I look back over my life and I'm 20 years retired, and it still seems like it all happened so quickly.
Yeah, believe me, we still like watching your stats too, and all that you did in college and the NBA, because it feels like so fast. And just hearing that, I love it. You pulled Depaul. You're like, look, I want to talk to you.
Yeah, because I wanted to go there.
Yeah, and then look at what you did at Depaul. So I want to talk about Depaul, because you became an All-American there, and this is the heyday, right, of Depaul basketball during the early 80s, which hopefully, Terry, fingers crossed, we get back to that point. You know, we're in March Madness. Just talking about what you did there. I mean, and then you're also, like you said, you know, you're doing Bible study classes, you're engaging students there, then you're playing with Mark Aguirre and, you know, Tyrone Corbin and all these great players. And you guys were very good at Depaul University, right? 79-6 during your 3 years there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, Terry.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that 6. Because my first couple of weeks in the NBA with the San Diego Clippers, I lost more than 6 games. I lost more games in the first 2 weeks with the Clippers than I had my whole career at DePaul.
Oh my God!
It was depressing for me, because I'd gotten used to winning, and that organization at the time was not committed to it. But DePaul was really special because it was the springboard to a lot of things. The ministry, I was allowed to run campus ministry. The kids, I remember the priest saying that they won't come to the services that he has. He said, so why don't you just take over them? And so I did, and we started walking the hallways, inviting people and sharing, you know, Christ with people. And we would have sometimes 100+ young people, and they weren't Black alone. They were Black, white, Jew, Greek. They were everything that DePaul was, and it was also in the disparity of the numbers that DePaul was at the time too, that parity, I mean. And so it was really special, because for me, I come from an all-Black environment, and when I hit the campus, it was more all white than it was all Black. Yeah. And so I had to learn how to relate to them, and I found out in that relating process, they are no different than us. Right. You know, and that we have to deal with them accordingly, instead of thinking only in the persona or the mindset of being Black. You know, because we don't own and run this earth. We share it with all the other cultures and people that are on it. That the Paul experience there, I majored in broadcast television and film, radio and television. And that had always been something I pursued even since high school. My companies that have been formed since I was like 22, 23 years old, my entertainment company, Cummings Entertainment Group, and the publishing company, Terry Cummings Publishing Company, are now about 35 years old each.
Congrats.
And we've this all stemmed from the relationship at Depaul and Carver High School, because I was pre-taught the basics of those things. So I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew I didn't have to be the on-camera personality, because I enjoyed the technical part. I mean, when we started, well, I'm moving ahead. So I'm gonna sidebar that. Well, when we started the company Cummings Entertainment Group, it came from the original company was Dream Song Productions by myself and my cousin at the time, Percy Beatty. And then we moved from the Chicago area. I put the company out in San Antonio when I finally got with the Spurs, and it's like a 17,000 square foot facility. But everything that I had learned, I put into that business, and I put all the things that I learned and all the business that I learned into knowing that what I wanted to do in the future. You know, and even while I was playing basketball, we were doing it, you know. The ministry plays a role because it's always been the constancy. It's always been the thing that kept me balanced and focused. And not that I was perfect, because I wasn't. I had to learn and find myself. And to me, that is the whole point of the experiences of life, is that you don't get bound up by your failures, but you let your failures be the fire behind all the successes that will come in the future. And people that can't handle you in your metamorphosis or your ugly place are not going to be able to walk with you and sit with you when you get to your promised place. It's real difficult, because the promised place is a lonely place. You know, high school, college, pro, you know, when you finally get to that place where you start to know who you are and what you're supposed to do, there are not a lot of people in that place walking with you, because most of them haven't gotten where you are. They still see themselves where they were last. You see yourself where you are, you know, and that's what pushes me. I hope I didn't get too far off track.
No, this is great. Look, you're taking my listeners and viewers with the sermon, taking to church, Pastor Cummings, and I love that. You're showing how everything kind of plays a role, and you weren't just an athlete. I think that's the conversation now. You were on campus, you were recruiting other students to Christ. You were playing basketball, but like you said, that was just one of your means. That wasn't your only means. You started the studio company so young, and I think that message needs to get out there, because you don't have to wait for someone to give you an opportunity. Sometimes you have to create that. You invest in yourself and invest in your dreams, Terry. And this is what I'm always telling people. You got to bet on yourself. I preach that all the time, and that's essentially what you did. And I also love that you touched on, none of us, right? Things happen, but it doesn't mean you to get off your track of what you want to do. And just going off of that, Terry, something I want to go back to while you were at Depaul. I think you also became a father very early, right?
Yeah.
17.
Actually, even before Depaul, my first child I had when I was 17 years old in high school. And Antonio is like one of my greatest sources of joy, my oldest son. And he is a father of 4 now. And married. And then I got married myself at 19 and was married for about 13 and a half, 14 years, and had 2 sons, TJ, who's the second, who now has the third. He has 5 children. And Sean, who's the baby, he has 1. And I think, you know, for me, after, and I mentioned this earlier, the experiences I went through with my father as a teenager, and the alcoholism and stuff, and the anger that it bred in me. One of the greatest joys outside of my walk has been being a father. It doesn't mean that I've been perfect. I've just been perfect in the Greek sense of the word perfect or perfection. I've been mature about it, knowing that I don't have all the answers, knowing that I am not the best man suited for this job sometimes. But I give everything and have given everything to make sure that my sons had every opportunity to be the best them they could be. And for me, that was and is still one of my greatest joys, is that I father these 3 boys. I love them with my whole heart. And it is significant to me because it brings a balance. You know, I found it during my playing career, and even now, if I go too long, and for me too long is a month or so or a week or so without talking or seeing them some kind of way on Zoom or Facebook Live until we can physically do it, I'm missing. Something is absent, because those are pieces and parts of me that qualify me for who I am. And if they're missing, something is missing from me too.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I'm so happy you touched on that. And I was happy that you talked about your dad, because you said, you talked about that relationship. But then you, when you're thrust into fatherhood, you are trying to be the best example that there is for your son. So they have that positive, especially Black male father in their life, right? Unfortunately, we see media, all these negative stereotypes and just this negative connotation that goes around with Black fatherhood. But I think here you are living, breathing examples that, you're learning as you go on, and you're trying to be the best that you can be for your kids. And that makes me think more recently, Terry, I'm sure you saw this with the whole situation with Kirk Franklin and his son, and now his fatherhood, right, kind of got thrust into the public. Now, to me personally, I didn't think that was a conversation that we needed to hear, but it was out there. And even, he's come out and apologized and said, look, I'm a father, but I'm not perfect. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that whole situation. First, about the situation, right, Terry?
Yeah, I stay up on the news because I think as a leader, pastoral wise, and just as a leader in general, as an activist, I think it's important to stay up on the news. Personally, I probably would not have apologized to anyone, and not out of arrogance or pride, but because as a father and a human being, as a man, you should always reserve the right to be common, and sometimes if nobody can take you there, it is your children or your spouse. Yeah. And the resolve is to deal with that between you and them, not you and people who are looking on going through worse things than you're going through. And I think it is a matter of integrity. And to me, integrity is not something you have before an incident. It's what you have after an incident. You can say all you want, you have integrity and character, but the moment you are tested and tried, that is when we know whether or not you have integrity. And I know Kirk, and I know that he's a good man in mind and heart. And I know in raising and rearing children, especially boys, you can talk nice all you want to them. There's a time you got to talk a language they understand. And anyone that doesn't agree with me, I don't really care. I'm just talking as a parent, not as Terry Cummings, because you're not going to come in my house and you're not going to live in my house, and you do what you want to do. And I think that a lot of times when you get to the point where Kirk was in his conversation with his son, who is not a boy, right, who is a 30-some-year-old young man, when you get to that point, you have, you done everything you could do to make this make sense. Talk to him the right way, and now you done got to the point where this joke is disrespecting you. And unfortunately, when these things happen, and I'm not saying that this is a continual process, but when you have these blow-ups like this, it's because you've reached the end of trying to be father in the perfect kind of love. Now it's going to be tough love, which is still love. But male men, young male men, have to understand that in a house there's only one king. And they have to understand that the rules are set by the king, not by the prince, who's waiting for, but he got to get his own house to do it. And I was raised by a man who, though he was an alcoholic the first 16, 17 years, he ruled that house. He was the enforcer of the house. And I don't even want to talk about what he did to enforce his will on us. But I will tell you, we all turned out well. We're healthy men now, and we're better because of the nature of how we raised. And I think eventually Kirk's son will be better too. I think it's unfortunate that it had to go that way, but we live in a time now where the social media platforms are available right away, and kids have learned to take advantage of them. And what he doesn't know is that even when he matures past this point, the son, that information he put out there in conversations he had will be there forever. And he will be perceived as that person until he changes into something else and a better conversation comes. Right.
And I appreciate you touching on that, Terry. Just to be talked about. And again, we're talking about fatherhood. I like to keep it real on the show, Terry, that you might have seen. And I think it's
I do too.
for all the parents and families. And staying on tough love, since it is March, I wanted to go back to Depaul. So I know it's hard to talk about those 6 losses, and you guys had a very good team while you were there. March Madness, you guys would get there, Terry, but we couldn't get over the hump, right? But I know that last year, especially that you were at DePaul, your coach, you talked about Ray Meyer. He was 68 years old at that time. He became under some fire, right, to basically retire. They were saying he can't do it anymore, he can get up. And as I understand it, Terry, you actually had to talk with him, right, and trying to talk him out of not retiring and not giving into the pressures in the media. So you talked about tough love, but can you talk about that conversation, right? I know it's tough, right? March Madness, when a team gets knocked out, everyone's coming for you, especially at a team that was as good as your DePaul team. So why was that conversation so important to you? And just kind of, if you can, give us some insight into how you were able to talk your coach into saying.
Well, I thought, in spite of the fact that we had all the talent at DePaul, I thought that Ray Meyer was the face of the school.
Right.
And the only reason I was there, outside of feeling a godly unction to be there, was because of Ray Meyer. And my conversation with him went like this: if you leave, I'm gone. If they make you leave, I'm gone.
Right.
And so eventually, with them, they decided they wanted to move him out, move Joey, his son, in. And I wound up leaving at the end of my junior year. I thought the world of Ray Meyer. He taught me a lot. But again, the greatest thing he did for me was allow me to learn how to be my own man. And that was the thing that, for me, I remember the most about it. When I went to him and said to him that I was considering going hardship at the end of my junior year, unlike my freshman year when I was thinking about leaving the school and just going into full-time ministry. Yeah. And he encouraged me. He said, "Don't you think you can reach more people with this platform than if you're out there just like any other preacher?" And I thought about it. I said, okay, that's wisdom. And so I went with that. But in my junior year, he did not advise me. He told me do what's best, because the hardship was about, that rule for me was about being able to take care of my family. And at the time, my wife and my children, and to be responsible, because right now, at that time at DePaul, all I was doing was everything was going toward them. My name, likeness, merchandising, everything benefited the school, and my scholarship was paid for before I stepped on the floor.
Right.
And so it became really important to me. I knew that my mom and my father had put in so much time to get our family, these 12, 13 kids, into a respectable place where we could go to school, learn things that they had not learned. Dad didn't have an 8th grade education. And I don't believe my mother had no more than a year or two of high school, because she was having kids at 14, 15. They were from that old school.
Right.
But when I think about the logistics of it all, I mean, I look back at it all, and I just think that had it not been all those bits and pieces and parts of things that we went through, that I couldn't honestly say that the experience of who I am has come about because of where I was, in the system at DePaul, in the system at Carver, in the system of Roseland, north side of Chicago, Allgill Gardens. All of those things are the things that made Terry Cummings who he is, whoever he is, in the eyes of people. But I'm thankful. So I'm okay.
I appreciate you touching on that so much, Terry. And now people are calling for it. We see those posters in the background, Terry. We see the basketball. We've got to talk some NBA hoops. So we're going from college. We talked about leaving DePaul. Then with the second pick, right? In the 1982 NBA draft, you get selected by the San Diego Clippers. And that draft class, if everyone remembers, we have James Worthy, right, going #1 overall. And right after you, Dominique Wilkins. So take me back to that moment and just what it was like for you to get selected by that organization.
It's unlike today. Today kids bring their families, and it's a real big celebration. I believe I took my mom with me, definitely the wife at the time. And what I remember from the draft was no one knew who would go 1, 2, or 3. We all knew those top three picks knew that any of us could wind up in LA, any of us with the Clippers and with Atlanta. And it just worked out in Worthy's favor. He wound up in LA. I wound up with the Clippers, and Dominique wound up with Atlanta. I didn't have anything to measure the level of success by then or now because I was the first one in my family to attain to it.
Mm,
And so I didn't take it for granted. I just didn't know how to dress for it. You know,
yeah,
I didn't know how to carry myself for it. I knew how to carry myself,
right.
but I didn't know how to carry myself on that level. And I think when I look back over my life, if I had been somewhat more aggressive
Hmm.
in the way that I played the game, maybe verbally, because physically I was a very physical player. Um, Maybe I would have been a bit different, but I chose to be me, and I chose to play the way I play, and to be an inspiration and to lead. And oftentimes that didn't necessarily require for me that I win a championship because I was watching young cats' lives change, and it wasn't just about church and Jesus. It was about being a man around them, you
Mm,
know, because a lot of the guys I played with, the latter part of my career, I had
right.
sons their age,
Mm,
you know, while I was in the league. I mean, I was a grandparent,
yeah.
and so it was a lot of intrigue. I think that going back sidebar and back to our original conversation about the draft, I don't even believe I wore a suit because
Yeah.
I was I was a straight street kid,
Yeah.
jeans, corduroy, some gym shoes, or some what they had, the hush puppies back then.
Yeah.
you know. So and I do remember if I had anything, it was a knit tie, you
Mhm.
know. And but I didn't have. I mean, I had about 3 or 4 pair of pants. I mean, I came from the old school where you didn't have a closet full of clothes. I had 3 or 4 pair of pants, and they were polyester,
Yeah.
and the shoes I had were hand-me-downs. They
Mhm.
weren't new shoes. I mean, I wore what I had. I didn't complain about it because I didn't know that you should. you know, I didn't know that you should or could. But something happened to me when I finally signed my first contract with the Clippers, and it, man, it did something on the inside of me. The first contract I was going to make more than my mother and father had made their whole lives,
Wow.
and it was frightful for me because I didn't know what to do with the kind of money they
Mm,
were giving me. I mean, I knew that I had advisors and stuff, and I knew to put money away and save it, but it was fearful because I'd spent most of my life really concentrating on making choices and decisions and not getting caught up because I could do it without consulting God or my advisors or counselors, or even just doing it because I want to. And I was that afraid was not like I'm not gonna live. It was like, man, I don't wanna make a mistake with this because my whole life is gonna be connected to this moment and how people see you. And then I had to, and this is really important, I had to get delivered from what people thought of me.
yeah.
Because once I did that, I was able to make choices and decisions invariably that were just mine. And they were based on what I saw and how I wanted to be perceived, not how they wanted to perceive me. And that's really important today because
Mm,
social media wants you to do what they want you to do,
right.
where I choose to do it the way I believe I should be doing it. I'm not going to be, subjected to people trying to tell me how to be me. And you've not lived one day in this body.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's so powerful, Terry, because you're right. Social media, they try to tell us who we are. And this is why I kind
Mhm.
of feel for the children of today, Terry, because they're growing up in the social media culture. And there's
Right.
these pressures and everyone, criticizing everything that you put out there, especially when it comes to athletes, right? Like anything they
Right.
put out, someone's criticizing. We have keyboard warriors that think they're better than. I think that's what's been so hard, Terry, for these young athletes. Like I just tweeted about this the other day, Terry, just today. An Ohio
Mhm.
State player, we saw what happened to the Ohio State basketball team, March Madness.
Right.
He
Right.
had got threats for his life, and people talking about he's like not even deserving to live on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they're having to go up against now, Terry. And
Yeah. But I think it's no different than the politicized environment that has been created, not just in the 4 years of President Trump, but all that existed before him, because he just pretty much benefited from what was already there. But I think we all are going to have to grow up. I think that we live in a time, and this is very prophetic time,
mhm,
because we live in a time where our leaders, the men are boys and the women are girls,
mhm,
and they run the country and they run the world. And it's unfortunate because my prayer, because I see it this way, and when I say, and I mean this to be disruptive and also to be not contentious, but to afford people the opportunity to see themselves as we see them.
Yeah.
Our leaders. So I think the thing is I pray for God to send wisdom into the realm of this earth, so that we would seek after wisdom and stop being children when it comes to matters that we have to be adults in. Because that is the determination right now for me in looking at all politics across the board, because I don't see them Republican or Democratic, left or right.
Right.
I see them purely as people acting out of the character that is required for the position that they hold. And they represent a people that are suffering and struggling. And it falls on us as pastors and ministers as well. You know, you can't go on into the pulpit and not be aware of what the people are going through and not be touched with what they're going through just because you're doing better, because you're doing better on the basis of taking from the poor. And the politicians are no different. I mean, anytime we do something in our country related to tax or tax reform, it affects the middle class and the poor, not the rich, because they normally are the beneficiaries of whatever happens. And so we need to take, you know, I believe this with my whole heart, and I'm not preaching. I'm just sharing. I just think we have to take the stance of wisdom and just, you know, be better as mothers and fathers, as leaders, as sons and daughters, instead of taking our information from these one-eyed bandits. Totally, we need to have concrete things, and that's, to me, what really makes us who we are in our generation. Is culturally we were given more balance.
Right.
We didn't have the social media platform to babysit us and to teach and train us. We got teaching firsthand. You know, we got conditioned firsthand. You know, you got out of line, you got touched up right there. They didn't wait till you got home. They made sure everybody knew you was getting yours. And then when you got home, mom would tell dad, Johnny, you know, Terry did such and such, and dad would take me in a room and close the door, and it would be like clock, 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 you know. But at the end, I was straightened out. I was assured who was in control. I was assured I had made a mistake, and it was not good to make it again.
Same way. Look, once it happened, and then there was nothing like getting home when your mom tells your dad, and you're just scared for that door to open.
Yeah.
So I understand it. And just hearing you talk about this, I think it goes to an important lesson now. You know, it doesn't matter Democrat, Republican. We're as a people, as a whole people, just trying to move forward. And right now we're going through the jury selection, right, for the George Floyd trial. We still have all of these issues going on in America with racial injustice. And then we just saw what happened in Atlanta, which has just been so heartbreaking.
Right.
And flat out racism, right? And we have athletes and everybody else who can speak up and speak out. And I want to ask you about this as a former professional athlete and as a preacher man. What do you feel about the whole everyone telling athletes to shut up and dribble, right? We have the Black Lives Matter movement turned health forward. We see churches and everybody else hanging the flag outside of their houses. We have a whole new presidential regimen in, right? And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris trying to tackle this. But how do we as a people move forward when there's just so much hatred, Terry, out there, and just so much just blatant disrespect of people, I'd say?
I believe with my whole heart, Kelsey, that the reflective place for each and every one of us should not be the politicians or the president. I believe that they are the beneficiaries of the fact that culturally we have foundational beliefs, and it comes, it is true, whether you're talking about white supremacy or black supremacy or whatever, you know, the culture has brought those things to perspective. And so the culture has to change those things. It's an individual thing. It's not the government, you know, it's not the politicians, it's not the president. These are the people that pass laws. That's their job. Our job is to take care foundationally of our communities, of our families, our church groups, you know, and part of the problem is the legacy of the culture of most people in America is Christianity.
Right.
It no longer exists. You know, it would be very difficult to consider America a Christian nation under the basis that they do not adhere to the words or the you know, the overall doctrine of Jesus Christ. They don't. They, rather than that, then adhere to those foundational beliefs that you find out through relational experiences with God, not religious experiences. We have become more of a religious nation than we are relational, and which means that we know more about the doctrine of Jesus Christ than we know about Jesus. And I think that you have to start there because you have to start on solid foundations. Everything else builds on top of that. If we start on that, then integrity and character, knowing and accepting and doing what we know to be right and wrong, they become accountability things. We become accountable for what we do. I mean, we are now in a scenario where we're watching the grown people who are kids act like kids, and throw temper tantrums. I'm gonna do this if you do that. And I didn't grow up like that. I grew up and I was taught that, by not just my parents, but by all the grown people around me. You don't have to do what someone has done to you. You can be the bigger person. And to me, that still is a reliable and responsible means by which to react. Now, don't get me wrong. I grew up fighting, and there's only so much I can take. I know that. There's a ecclesiastical writing by Solomon. He says that there's a time and a season for everything under the sun. There's going to come a time where I'm not going to turn the other cheek. There's going to come a time, a Kirk Franklin time, where I'm going to say what I feel. And I'm going to deal with what repercussions come from it. And I'm not talking about people having a say so. I'm talking about God, because he's the only one that credibility wise can really reprimand me, because he's perfect. Every last one of the rest of us are imperfect human beings, capable of worse than what Kirk did, or more so, more of it, And so the thing is I just set myself right in the middle, and I just believe this, the accountability is one of the one of the most important things that we can have in this day and hour. But you can't have accountability if you don't have a foundational belief and structure in place that allows for integrity to come out of this in a more powerful way than it is right now.
Very, very well said. You're one of the people I wish I could have on for hours. We need a whole program to really deeper into everything. I appreciate
thank you.
Again, it's about us moving forward and hopefully getting stronger together, and what's good about that relation. And it's so, so, so important. So I hope all of my listeners and readers put that. All right, Terry, you're starting to get some basketball questions. And we got to talk about your time in the NBA, because you're still a favorite for many NBA basketball heads, Terry.
Well, I appreciate that.
One of the first questions we have for you: he was one of the toughest master you had playing at any level.
As far as defenders, you think?
Let's do defender.
I think one of the more difficult teams I played against, players, was Kevin McHale, but the Boston Celtics, because they, when we would play them, they would put Robert Parrish, who's a 7'1", on me. I'd beat him going to the basket, and Kevin McHale was back there waiting on me. And they're both really long. So that was really one of the tough. I thought that most of the times, if not all the time I stepped on the court, I had a simple mentality. I was the best player on the court. That's how I thought. That was always embedded in me. It didn't matter. And I had played with Mike MJ during the summers in the Pro-Am. We were on the same team, sponsored by Playboy. And so we would talk and we would share, and stuff starts to rub off on each other. But I always thought, even when we played them, I'm the best player on the floor. I mean, it's like this, people can say what they want, but if you don't go at what you do with the mindset you are the best at it, then you don't deserve to be there. You know, because other guys know it. They know they can't mind screw you, excuse the expression. They can't steal your heart, because your heart and your mind are already set. You the man. And it was always my mindset that when I went out, I'm the best player on this court. I may not show up today to be the best player, but I still think and feel I am. So at any point in the game, I can be going. I've had games where I had terrible first halves, first three quarters and a half. But in them last 6 minutes, I played like I said I am, and would show up. And I was always a better player when the game was on the line than any other time. And I've always prided my game on constancy or consistency. I remember a reporter asking me once, when I was playing for, I think I was playing for San Antonio, and he asked me, he says to me, he says, now, you're supposed to have a heart condition, right?
Yeah.
And he said, but I'm looking at your numbers these first 8 or 9 years. He said, if you have a heart condition, everybody in the league ought to have a heart condition, because of your consistency. I mean, and I got it, because that was always, and it is still, one of the things my life is predicated on, is being consistent,
Right.
faithful, where you can be trusted that no matter who we playing against or what I got to do work-wise, I'm going to stand out, because it's my job to be the best me.
To be the best version of yourself. No one can complain about that. Yeah, you're on the court. You better believe that you're the best player. There's nobody else who's the best player. I love that mentality. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's MJ or anybody else. Terry Cummings was going to be the best player that he could be. And touching on that, talking about the best player coming, Terry, what a rookie season you had, right? Averaging 23.7 points, 10.6 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 1.8 steals. You won Rookie of the Year. You won all of the Rookie of the Month awards during that season. Cover of Sports Illustrated. Talk about that and what it meant to you to kind of just reach that pinnacle of basketball so early on.
Well, again, I had nothing to measure these things by. And when it came to my rookie year, and probably the first 5 or 6 years of my career, I think that I did what was natural for me because of being an athlete and the ability. I did not know the NBA game. It takes you, even with grown men back then, 3 or 4 years playing to learn the NBA game. I'm not talking about basketball.
Right.
It's the business, it's the personalities, it's the administration, and it's the X and O's. I mean, and I didn't learn it till I got to Milwaukee and played under Don Nelson. But Don Nelson taught me the NBA game.
Right.
And first 2 years, it was just all ability, but I didn't have anything to measure what I was doing by. I just did it. I did it because I had the ability to do it. And again, that whole mindset I had was, I'm the best player. I don't care what you all are saying. I don't care who went number 1. I don't care who went number 3. I can do this. And unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, back then when you played in small markets, you just didn't get exposed to the whole market. People didn't know how they knew about you, but didn't know how good you were. But I had to learn early on with San Diego and with Milwaukee too, that you cannot predicate your success on whether you're voted into a position or given some ancillary award. It has to be something that's in your gut and in your mind. You know how good you are. You enforce your goodness on people, or how good you are. You make them, how many times I came to the scores table and there was a guy at the scores table that was coming in from the opposing team, and he knew I was coming in the game to stick him, and I would hear him cussing because he would say, I got to stick this so-and-so, so-and-so, because they knew that they were going to have to work. As soon as I came in, you couldn't have no lapses, because I played the whole time I was in. I didn't take possessions off, and I worked really hard. And that was always my mindset. But I was doing it, again, a lot of times just on ability. But once I started to get groomed in Milwaukee, when I was traded there at the end of my second year from the Clippers, Nelly made things clear to me. I mean, he told me what he wanted from me. No coach had really done that in my whole life. He told me, I just need you to score and rebound and defend the biggest and strongest guy on the court. And that to me was an assignment. I mean, and if you think about it, Kelsey, if I respect and appreciate people more who tell me what they want and who they are than those who hide those things from me and make me have to find out.
Right. Real. And that's so much of it, right? Just tell me up front. Right? So often people try to go around.
Let me decide if I want to be a part of it or not.
Exactly. Tell me early, right? And I think that's important. It's great to hear just, again, how a great coach was able to tell you that you guys were able to have a good relationship, because you're talking about playing in Milwaukee with the Bucks. And during that 84-85 season, you made to your first All-Star team, which I'm sure was special to you. You're going to say probably that you didn't measure up to that, but still, to be named an All-Star Terry at the top level, it had to mean something special for you, right?
Again, I had nothing to measure it by.
say that.
But it was definitely an honor. And the greatest part of that is I played in 2 All-Star games, and both of them I played in the largest capacity All-Star games that were played at the time in the NBA. That one was in Indianapolis, I think, and the next one would be in the Houston Astrodome. Both of them were in domes.
Yeah.
So it was, we were like little pea stains down at the bottom. Got 70, 80, 90,000 people at the game. But for me, that game will always resound in me because I brought my mother and my father there, and they got to see what God had inspired in their son. And I was sitting around with, NBA royalty, and it was not as a servant. It was as a prince, a king, depending on who you're talking to. But I was in a place where I belonged, not because of arrogance or pride, but everything I was doing said I belonged there at that moment. And it had taken me 3 years to get there. And it would take me another 3 or 4 years to get back. But I learned even through those experiences, you can't measure how good you are by whether or not you get accepted to be on the All-Star team, because your numbers, your team wins. A lot of the guys that go to these All-Star games are not world champions. They're guys that are flamboyant, flashy, people favorites, coaches like them for whatever reason. But at my position, small forward, big forward, center, there were always back then a lot of guys that could play at that position. And so it was sparingly people would get chosen and some wouldn't. But I learned not to base who I am on that, because that's a fallacy. That ain't the real deal.
Exactly.
It's politics.
And it's a conversation we still have today. And again, you just knew who you were. You weren't trying to measure up against anybody else's expectations.
No.
On basketball, we talked about the Bucks, we talked about the Clippers. I do want to touch on the Spurs with you, Terry, playing with them from 89 to 95. You guys a pair, David Robinson, Sean Elliott. So let's touch a little bit about your career in San Antonio, which was the longest you played with the team.
Well, it was also one of the things I didn't want to go there, because I thought of it as a cow town, and it wasn't. It was very urban. But I was really kind of enthralled in Milwaukee. I was working with a local pastor and ministry there, and felt really comfortable there. But I think that those are the times and seasons of your life when change happens, is when you get so comfortable you don't realize there's more that you can achieve. And so when San Antonio traded for me and brought me there, they told me what I was there to do, the same thing that Nelly wanted. But in addition to, I want you to mentor David Robinson, Sean Elliott, and all these other younger guys. And so, even then, I think my first year in San Antonio, I averaged about 22 or 23 points. And David averaged about 24 or 25. But it was a great experience. We had a great young team, a lot of talent. It was, playing for Larry Brown. Larry Brown was another one of those great initiators as a coach. I learned a lot about basketball and coaching styles, and that thing he had, the intensity that he has for the game. I learned that from him, to focus. He was the one that told me right around my 9th or 10th year, I think, he said, TC, if you're going to hang around here, you're going to have to be light. The lighter you are, the longer you can play. And so I adapted it. I made sure I kept my weight down. So that at 39 or 40, I was still a go-to man for the Golden State Warriors. They were going to me in the fourth quarter to get baskets, because I've never had a problem scoring. I always knew how to get to the rim, or if I couldn't drive it, I couldn't shoot it, I would fight you on the boards to get it, But that was, to me, one of the greatest experiences I've had, Milwaukee, San Antonio. But leaving those teams and going on those last 5 or 6 teams was, like, for me, a missionary journey. I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to do. I was really clear about a lot more things. I wasn't caught up in the trappings of being in the NBA, and I was very focused.
That is great to hear. And just great memories for the 18 seasons you gave us in the National Basketball Association. You talked about last playing with the Warriors. I do want to go to one more question from the fans here that they wanted to ask you. As a man of the cloth, do you feel Mark Jackson was blackballed as a coach because of his beliefs?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that it's difficult for many of the people in the secularism part of the NBA to deal with us as believers. And the more affirmative we are about our belief, the more difficult it is. It's easier for them to see things from a secular perspective than it is a non-secular perspective. And we teach on the basis of how we were taught. So we can't necessarily be who people want us to be. We have to be who we are. And I know Mark, me and him will talk from time to time. He is a man that I'm privileged to know and understand. I have a lot of respect for him, not just because of the Christian part of him, but because of how he carries himself.
Yeah.
And if there is a problem with most people, it is that he effectively affected that group of kids in Golden State, and the effect he had on them is still present now.
Mm-hmm. Very.
And I've been there where coaches or GMs, administrators were offended by what coaches did and the control they had over players and moved the coach so they could come down or bring in whoever they wanted to bring in to run the show. I've been in organizations where that has come to pass.
And I appreciate you touching on that, because I know you've even spoke out about it, how sometimes you would get from other players, right, who would go on you about your beliefs and what you're doing. I believe one of them was Dennis Rodman, right, when you were in school, you know.
Yeah.
But
I remember doing what was his name? Cat, he was doing the show, and I guess he thought he was going to put me on blast because Dennis felt out of place with San Antonio, because we would have Bible studies on the road or prayer meetings and things, and they were not religious. It was just the consistency. Nobody had to come. If you came, you chose to.
Right.
And the interviewer was like, well, Dennis said he felt like you all kind of put him on. I said, put him on blast. I said, if Dennis felt like he was put on blast, it's because Dennis did not feel what we felt. We didn't push or force it on him. Ain't nobody complaining about him going hanging out at the gentleman's club. And so the thing is, the choice is, if you come to San Antonio, you know who we are.
Right.
We're not going to change for you.
Mm-mm.
We're not going to beat you over the head with it either. And I told the guy, you're not going to treat me just any kind of way. No, I said, we never forced or enforced anything about our beliefs on anybody on this team. What we have done is walk the walk.
Well said. Like you said, look, if he comes, he comes. If not, but you guys are going to be trained and be who you.
It's all good.
Can't complain about that, Terry. It's been such a pleasure to have you on again. I could talk with you all day. I know you have many things to do. I so appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You can do life after basketball, being more than an athlete. I hope all is going well with your church. Right, you're down in.
It is.
It's great to hear. And again, they're lucky to have you. I mean, just come here and just taking these tidbits. And before I let you go, is there any way we can follow you? I know you've done music. You've done everything, Terry. A man who can never be in one box is going to achieve what you want. So any last messages or words for the people?
Well, I can be reached. Our church website is HEMI.church. And HEMI is the acronym for Hope Egeneto Ministries International, HEMI.church. My personal email for any write-backs or anything is terrycummings9@AOL.com. I know I got Gmail and all the rest of them, but AOL works better because all of y'all are gone from it. So, let me see, CummingsEntertainmentGroup.com. You can reach us there. I mean, that's all you primarily need to reach out to us. But otherwise, I'm just thankful, Kelsey, to just be here with you. And I love to talk about things other than basketball. And I've always been well-rounded. And I think it's just great when you get to have those conversations, because you can't always have them from the pulpit, because the pulpit is God's place and it's for his message. And so I'm going to close with this. I've had plenty of people who were parishioners in our ministry come to me and say, Apostle, I didn't know you were a professional ball player. I said, yeah. They said, well, why don't you talk about it? I said, I'm not here playing basketball. That's not what it is. I mean, this is the most that I will talk about it. I have to be asked. I won't just go to talking about my accomplishments and the things I've done, because I feel like they should speak for me. That's how I was trained and raised and reared, so I don't think I have to talk about it, but I know that in now presenting myself and the message of my career to the NBA and the players and the boards that will elect us to the Hall of Fame, I have to make a pitch for Terry Cummings and tell them that I deserve to be there. Like I said earlier in the interview, I belong there.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that with my whole heart, not out of arrogance, not out of pride. No, I didn't win championships. I didn't win MVPs, but I covered every other base, you know, and I did things to me that were more important than the championships, you know, and things like that. And that was, I encouraged and worked with young men to become grown men. You know, that's why I kept being brought into teams after I left Milwaukee the second time. I go to Seattle, Philadelphia, New York, and then Golden State. And all of them, they sought me out, the GMs and the coaches, to come and help them with these young guys. That means something. That matters to me.
Right.
And we'll leave it at that until we talk again.
Drop my add anything else there. I think you said it. Believe me voting you, but also. But I appreciate you taking that, your accomplishments for yourself, your words for yourselves. And I'm just honored to spend time with me Saturday.
Thank you.
So best
for having me.
You, my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Stay safe in Georgia. Well wishes to your beautiful family. How many grandkids, Terry? Can I ask?
I have 10.
Oh my gosh! So the growing Cummings family, just best wishes.
Yeah, love it. I love every minute of it too.
And hopefully, I appreciate you so much. Be a stranger to the show. And Terry, you seem like you have like a ball. So I'm just saying, you have a basketball much. I would just say, don't try to basketball on the basketball.
I'm not. You say I look like I can?
Yeah, you look like you're military.
No, I don't. I could, but I don't think. I think for me, the thing that's kept me from going back to the court, for instance, is that I know me. I know if I go back, I'm going back right. I'm not going to have a halfway Terry Cummings game, and I'm not going to be out there hollering and screaming and acting a fool. I'll still be that bruiser who can score and got offensive abilities. I just wouldn't want to go out there and dismember my whole conscious reality of who I am to me or anyone else. So no, I don't fool with it. I go out, do camps from time to time, and mechanically I can do the mechanics of playing. As long as they don't ask me to run up and down, I'm good. And I ain't in no pain. I don't have any ankle, knee, back problems or anything. I think that I really wanted to be afforded as I got older, the ability to do it because I wanted to.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Again, Terry Cummings, thank you so much for coming here on Listening with Me. And you guys heard how to read. Please to church, just like the great stuff going on against your life. Again, appreciate your time.
Thank you. I look forward to doing it again, Kelsey.
I do too as well. Keep it up, Terry. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, you guys just heard from Terry Cummings. Wow, just an incredible conversation. He left it there. I appreciate his time. I hope everyone's enjoying March Madness. And just a reminder that also, if you guys appreciate and enjoy the show, which I appreciate all of you each and every week for tuning in, check out the all-new merchandise we have for our shop. A special shout out to Silver FX Sportswear. We have hats, jackets, t-shirts, and more. So please check it out. I will drop the link for the show in the comments, but it's also available on my website. Just go to KelseyNicoleNelson.com and hit Listen In with KNN Gear. I could not do it without you. Also, thank you for the support. Again, it truly means a lot to me. I hope to see you for the show. So please join me then. We'll have another special guest again at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Again, please check out this merchandise, and then we'll also be back next Saturday at 2 p.m. Also, Fear the Turtle, go Terps. I know Georgetown. It's tough to talk about, but hey, they'll be back. Kat Ewing, special shout out to you as well for just getting Georgetown to be the Big East champions. What a time it's been in the DC area. Again, thank you all so much for joining me. Terry Cummings, appreciate his time, and I'll see you all on Thursday. And as always, please also check out audio versions of the show on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Just search Listen In with KNN. All right, see y'all next week. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe, and happy first day of spring.
Follow Kelsey on social media at The Real K Nelson. Catch episodes of Listen In with KNN on YouTube, on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN.
You used to hear me on your airwaves or hear me on my hit podcast, but now I'm taking you to the screen. You'll love Elevator Thoughts. We will talk the latest trending in sports. It's game time. What better way to get to know those that visit the show than over some good food and drink? It's time for confessions.